Yeah, you're really right. Why do you not want to go out? You want to go out after the sun is already up, but I'm okay with that. Oh yeah. Her office is just down. Like perfect. I think she's yeah, it's been, I've been around the backside for the last 2 weeks.
You guys ready? You guys ready? Okay, y'all. It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and start. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Can everybody hear me in the back? Yes? Okay, perfect.
Yes, Ms. Bryan.
Welcome to the Folly Beach Civic Club Candidate Forum. I'm Amy Ray, president of the Folly Beach Civic Club. The Civic Club was organized in 1938 for the betterment of Folly Beach. The goals highlighted in 1938 continue to drive our mission and focus. The earliest reference we can find of a candidate forum is 1990, believe it or not. This tradition of hosting a candidate forum honors our commitment to inform citizens about their local government and their community, to promote good citizenship and encourage good government. It is my hope tonight's forum will serve our community in this way. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator, Dina Dockery. Our timekeepers, Dave Miller and Wendy Leeper. And finally, our candidates. So I will read a brief introduction submitted by each candidate and hand the program over to Dina. First, candidate for council, Skip Fink. Mr. Fink and his wife, Sam, have been full-time residents of Folly Beach since 2013. Active in the Folly Beach community, Mr. Fink has served on the Folly Beach Design Review Board for 8 years, 3 as chairman. The Finks have 2 married sons and 6 grandchildren. 2, candidate for council, Jody Lynn Rogers. Jody is a collaborator and a consensus builder. As a senior global supply chain executive, she has achieved tremendous results by leading people with conflicting goals to solve problems. She moved to the Charleston area over 20 years ago to lead a startup company that brought over 300 jobs to the area. Jody is prepared and committed to listen and work together with all of Folly's constituents and council members to solve challenges the city faces. Thank you both for being here tonight. And now Dina will go over the ground rules and start us off.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for coming tonight. Thanks to the Civic Club for doing this. For the candidates, I appreciate your willingness to serve, and also to the city for the facilities and Wes and public safety to support us. I've lived here on Folly for about 12 years and been very active in the Civic Club and Planning Commission, Parks and Rec, and other things. Jody and Skip will have a chance to talk a little bit about their background over the next hour and a half. And I want to thank you all for those who took the time to submit questions. We did receive more than 24 questions, and we don't have time for that many questions tonight. So we've sorted them, we've combined the ones that overlap in order to try to cover as much ground as possible tonight. And then Jody and Skip have agreed afterwards to stay around and answer any questions. So if we didn't get far enough down into your particular issue, please take this time to go up and chat with them. So before we get to the ground rules, I just wanted to ask you, does anyone know why the dolphin crossed the road? To get to the other tide.
So that's the way it's gonna be.
So that's the way it's gonna be. Yeah. I have another one. You wonder, how do we know the ocean is really friendly?
Because it waves
It
at
has lots of waves, that's right. Okay, so for the ground rules, there's 2 seats over here and a couple here. So if people continue to migrate in, just point them over here. So for the ground rules, the candidates have not seen the questions. Dave and Amy and I've seen the questions. We ask that you hold your applause until the end of the forum. Public safety is here on hand to assist us if we have any outbursts, because we need to continue in an efficient and orderly manner. I just read something, I'll sort of paraphrase it. We're going to run a tight ship, not a pilot ship. No whiskey, no mutiny, and hopefully no insurrection. So what else? Earlier we flipped a coin to see who would go first, and Skip. Jody won the toss and elected that Skip start off. So that's how we're going to do it. So afterwards, each round, we will take turns who goes first. Both candidates tonight, they're going to have the opportunity to respond to all questions. We're not going to have any questions tonight that are just targeted at one person. So the first question is going to be introductory in nature. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to respond, and that's so they can answer what we've asked, and then also use that additional time, if they want to add in any other things they want to say. 3 minutes really is quite a long time when you're sitting up here. So, and there will be no rebuttal to that 3 minute period. So since Jody elected for Skip to go first, Skip will get the introductory questions. He'll get his 3 minutes. Jody will get her 3 minutes. And then the next question, we will start with Jody. After that, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. Dave Miller and Wendy Leeper, like Amy said, they'll be our timekeeper. So Dave will hold up a 30-second and then a stop. So then if necessary, not during the introductory round, but the following rounds, if a rebuttal is necessary, we will do that. It just depends on how it goes. We'll see. I don't know that it will always be necessary. We'll just have to see how it goes. And then we will have closing statements, and each candidate will get 2 minutes for a closing statement if there's anything else they want to add in. So with that being said, I'll just have some water. Yes?
Can I ask one question? I just want to make one opening thing that's not part of my 2 minutes. No, Jody and I are neighbors. I want y'all to understand that. We're friends. Our families have been together. And so while we may disagree, we will disagree amicably. That's our agreement. So the fist fight will be later in the parking lot.
Also, if everyone could just take a quick check and make sure that your ringers and vibrators are off, and you are being broadcast live. I'm gonna wave to everyone at home. So also, Skip and Jody, if you can talk to the back row, then that should be loud enough for the back row, and it should be loud enough for the mics to pick you up for those at home.
Sure.
Okay. Timekeepers, are you ready? All right, Skip, you're up. It's up to you. If you want to stand up or sit down, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Okay. How long have you been a full-time resident on Folly, meaning having eligibility to be a registered voter? And what local organizations and city committees have you served? And what experiences do you feel have made you qualified to be a council member?
Would you repeat the question? No, I'm just kidding. We've lived here since 2013, so we're going on 12 years. as full-time voting residents. We are active members in the community of the Civic Club. We volunteer at a lot of organizations, giving a lot of blood to Dave. But we, by and large, Sam's been on the Parks and Rec. I've been on the Design Review Board for 9 years. I chaired it for 3 years. We're very active in our local church, where I chair the trustee committee, and have done so for 8 years. So we like to think we're active here, and what qualifies to be here. As a part of my 3-minute introduction, this isn't it, right?
No, this is it.
Oh,
You
this
get
is
to
my
answer
3
the
minutes.
question.
Okay, no.
Keep going until
Okay,
Forrest told to stop.
I stepped into my adulthood from the University of Florida with a bachelor's degree in political science and pre-law, but I stepped into at the same time to a Marine Corps uniform where I spent 25 years of continuous active duty. Marine Corps had a sense of humor. It allowed me to progress through the ranks, and I retired as a colonel. My wife is a Clemson grad and a registered nurse, and she followed me around for 50 years while we did all this other stuff, and I'm very appreciative to have had her in my corner all that time. Following my Marine Corps career, I was asked by the governor of South Carolina to serve on his staff to work base closure and realignment issues, where I was very satisfied to see Charleston adequately refurbish itself from the closing of the Naval Shipyard. Myrtle Beach Air Force Base was one of our target wins as well. Following my state involvement, 9/11 happened, and I took the opportunity to go back into the Department of Defense as a contractor, moving back to Washington, D.C. in the Alexandria area, where I would work for a systems engineering company, supporting command control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. That's C4ISR. Joined a systems engineering company, worked diligently, I thought, until I found myself as the president of that engineering company. We opened offices in Charleston and 7 other cities around the country. Were acquired by a larger company, which happens a lot in the defense industry, where I had the opportunity to relocate here to Folly Beach and begin what I thought was my 3rd opportunity to retire. We consulted for a little bit, but then we committed to the community. We feel like that it's our opportunity to take a forward stance now. I like to think my adult life has been in service to country, service to family, service to community. We're here, we want to contribute. This is the prime time for me now to give back at a level that I think is commensurate with where this council wants to take this particular city. We're a community, I'm for balance in the community. I want to see us move forward. A lot of divisiveness that's in the rearview mirror. Let's leave it there and look out the windshield.
Thank you. Jody, I'll repeat the question, but for both of you, if you would address the audience, I think that might be a little better than, even though I'm asking the question. Go ahead and feel free to focus on the audience. Okay, so Jody, how long have you been a full-time resident on Folly with eligibility to be a registered voter? In what local organizations or city committees have you served? And what experiences make you qualified to serve as a council member?
Thanks, Dina. So I have been, my husband and I have been on Folly Beach for 10 years, full-time residents, and have been registered voters that whole 10 years. And essentially during that 10 years, I've gone through periods where I worked out of town. I was out of town a lot, and then in the last 5.5 years got the opportunity to work for a company in West Ashley. So I've served as a senior director of the global supply chain there. Have not, unfortunately, had the opportunity to volunteer and serve in a lot of communities because I have been working full-time. But I am retiring in 2 weeks, actually a week and a half now. And so I am looking forward to being able to devote myself full-time to serving this community. And that is really a big part of the reason why I'm running for city council, because it is a community that I love and cherish and really want to take the time now that I will have some free time to serve and give back. As far as my background prior to retiring, I've spent 30 years as a supply chain manager, executive, leading global organizations, and in supply chain, I have to be very much collaborative and a consensus builder. And I think that's one of the things that really would lend itself well to being on city council. I would use my skills in leadership and collaboration to both reach consensus with council on some of the problems that the city faces. I also have a strong background in data analytics, and I believe that that would also help to make more data-driven decisions for the challenges that the city faces. If you choose me to be your representative on council, which I hope you do, I will use that nearly 30 years of leadership and collaboration and certainly my skills in listening and reaching consensus to listen to all of the stakeholders, whether they're full-time residents, part-time residents and property owners, business owners and the like, to make sure that we develop solutions that serve the community as a whole. I'll solicit input from all of the residents and property owners before making decisions that could have negative, unintended, negative impacts. And I've got my 30 seconds, so I no need to fill the space. I think that was pretty much all.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're up.
Okay.
So now we're going to the 90 seconds. Okay. So this topic is listening to residents. In the March issue of the Sandspur, both of you asserted that you plan to listen to voices in the community. What steps will you take to become aware of residents' perspectives about issues? And how will you choose whether to support residents or outside interest when they come in conflict? Jody?
So, yeah, that is really important to me, like I said, to listen to all of the people on Folly, whether they're residents, part-time or full-time. And part-time, I say, because those are people that we hope to be the future full-time residents of Folly Beach. And I think that was a voice that, as we've gone through the short-term rental debates, was really pretty well blocked out. So I will certainly listen to all sides and as I said, consider solutions that will reach consensus and will be good solutions for the community as a whole. In addition to that, that one issue, I think, spending a lot of time in the last month and a half or so, I've spent a lot of time knocking on doors, meeting residents, listening to what are the issues that really impact you. And I've learned a lot, especially as I spent time with folks on the other side of the bridge. I've learned a lot about the issues that are different, that those folks face sometimes than the ones that we get kind of caught up on here on the island, so.
Can we repeat the question?
Yes, please.
All right. In the March issue of the Sandspur, you both asserted that you plan to listen to voices in the community. What steps will you take to become aware of residents' perspectives about issues? And how will you choose whether to support residents or outside interest when they come in conflict?
Okay, thank you. Interesting that when you sit and you talk about all the constituents off the island, on the island, in terms of being voting residents, they are diverse communities, and getting to know each of them has been a goal of ours, of mine. Me and my wife, we've had meets and greets at different locations, some neighborhoods. It does let you get down to the grassroots of what people's interests are. We found some of it to be flooding, some of it to be traffic, some of it to be parking. So you collate all those informations. Now, I'm an independent in terms of this campaign. I'm self-funded. I don't feel like I will be in any way outside interest influence. I don't want to have that particular weight on my shoulder if somebody taps me later and says, but you owe me this. I don't want to owe anything to anybody in particular. I really want to represent everybody. I think that's what we both want to do. The key is, can you do that from a consensus, middle-of-the-road position? I also believe that it's pretty important that we think about not only community, but we think about balance. And if we're not addressing all the interests of the different types of residents we have out here, the different type of investors, the different types of available housing, there are lots of issues we need to look forward for and not dwell on the things that we hope we've already addressed and we can pretty much put back in the back mirror.
Thank you. Okay, Skip, we're moving to, towards safety and quality of life. So we received 3 questions regarding safety and quality of life. Safety is a concern of residents on both sides of the bridge for sure. Streets congested with pedestrians, bicyclists, golf carts, and vehicles competing for space is stressful and oftentimes dangerous on our roads. One resident asked how West Ashley can be improved so they feel safe again walking, biking, or pushing a stroller. The city has in recent years made safety improvements by installing pedestrian paths, mid-block right-of-ways, and sidewalks. So the Arctic Avenue plan is actively seeking community input to improve the flow for all users. So the question, Skip, is what input have you provided on the Arctic Avenue plan, and what actions will you recommend to council for continuous safety improvements on our streets and bridges?
Okay. Safety and pedestrian safety, vehicular safety are premier in everybody's mind, all the residents out here. None of us have driven down East or West Ashley and not had a car door open up or somebody loading something in the trunk or jumps out. It's scary to me. DOT owns the roads. So part of what we have to continue to do is collaborate not only with the agencies that own certain effects on our roads, but also make sure that we're receiving resident inputs, especially those that live on the roads. The Arctic Avenue plan, I was part of that conversation, and the idea that they're gonna have an 8-foot wide pedestrian and bicycle right-of-way, I think is a good start. It's gonna narrow down to a single lane of traffic, but you're not gonna lose any parking. There's some issues about whether or not the right-of-ways are being taken up into private property. Well, there's not any private property that's going to be infringed upon that's not already set aside as right-of-way for the city. So that idea that, oh my goodness, they're gonna take away part of my parking that's not a legitimate argument. There will be parking. The hard part though is determining where and when you can allow other off-site activities to go on that will seem to crowd the roadways. The different activities at the beach and things of that nature.
You ready? Okay. I'm just making sure everyone's ready.
Gave me the stop, man.
No point in rushing. Okay, you ready?
I am.
Okay, the Arctic Avenue plan is actively seeking community input and to improve the flow for all users. What input have you provided on the Arctic Avenue plan, and what actions will you recommend to council for continuous safety improvement on our streets and bridges?
So I did provide, I actually came to the Arctic Avenue open house, I think that was in October of 2023. And while I was here, provided input, but also listened a lot to some of the residents that would have been impacted, especially the folks that, I think there was not as much concern with the impact in the commercial district, but the plan that was going to extend East Arctic beyond the commercial district was a concern to a lot of the people that live on Arctic Avenue. Not just about their parking spaces in front of their house being taken, which was a concern, but what happens when the trash trucks are picking up trash and we've only got one lane open? What's the avenue to get around that? What happens when emergency vehicles need to come through at a fast pace? My concern with the Arctic Avenue project in the residential area, as well as West Ashley, is actually parking on both sides of the road. And as I understand, the parking on the both sides of the road, particularly on West Ashley, has been the result of the city's plan to extend paid parking on East Arctic Avenue. And I would like to see the city revisit those plans because I think it has created an extreme risk that we don't need to take on West Ashland.
Okay, thank you. Jody, you're first.
Okay.
Make sure I'm right here. Okay, we're talking population. The 2010 census reported a Folly Beach population of 2,617, and the 2020 census showed 2,078 residents. That's a decrease of 20.6%. What can be done to stop our population decline? And do you think limiting the number of STRs will help reverse this off-island migration?
So first of all, I will say that I understand that those census numbers show a dramatic decrease. However, I also understand that there are concerns about the way the census was taken in 2020 because we were in the middle of COVID. So I don't know that anybody has validated those numbers recently, since then. But before we started making decisions about how to slow the population growth, I think that would have been a good data point to capture. With respect to growth of the island, I think I heard, a lot of the concern that I heard during the debate over short-term rentals was investors are just buying up the island and we don't want, I don't think any of us want to see that happen here, myself included. However, as I was campaigning last time around and this time around, what I have found is I've not met the investor that is purely buying and burning and turning. I've met people that are buying their second home with the hopes of being able to retire here. And I think that as a result of the short-term rental cap, we're starting to see residents that are considering whether this is where they still want to live or not. So I feel like we've had unintended and negative consequences as a result.
Okay, thank you. Skip?
Population decline. Well, it's that, I don't disagree at all with the idea that the census was taken at a pretty tough time during COVID. But notwithstanding, I think people choose quality of life a lot on how long they want to stay a place before they sell and move. I'm sorry, Judy, but I've seen a lot of off-island investment vehicles, LLCs and things of that nature, that are acquiring properties to put in their portfolios for revenue gain. They don't plan to come here. They don't plan to make this their community. They plan to make this their investment. I certainly agree with the idea that people want to have a second home here so that they can eventually get here to retire here. There are venues for that. I don't believe that a reasonable cap in the short-term referendum world, the short-term rental world, where a third of this island already has licenses or will be allowed to have licenses, and anybody can have a long-term license, is a reason why necessarily you don't want to live here anymore. It's a balance. My concern is that the balance gets out of whack if all of a sudden there's unlimited short-term rentals and there's no ability for community to exist here and have the opportunity to know who's living next door, and it's not an in and out activity of 3-day rentals in your neighborhoods. So that's part of the reason why I think that you have to have a cap and you have to live within it.
Can I rebut that just a second about people moving, about what I said about people
As
moving?
long as you
off?
stay on population and not STR, because of course,
Yeah,
the
no,
genie's
I
out
was
the
just
bottle,
gonna-
we're going there.
To the point that Skip made, that he doesn't think that people are leaving as a result of the cap. I personally have friends that they are permanent residents, but they kept their short-term rental license because that was always their backup plan. Now that backup plan has really been taken away from them. It costs them a tremendous amount of money to keep their ISTR license when they're living here full-time. But should something happen where they have to take care of their parents, that option of not having an ISTR would not be available to them anymore. So that's why they're leaving.
Did you Are
Well,
you good,
no,
or you
I
have
mean-
30 seconds?
We can agree to disagree on how you interpret those. I mean, statistics can be interpreted either way from either side. I see people that have lots of options to plan appropriately to retire and live here. And to have unlimited STRs, in my opinion, is not in the best interest for the overall community.
Okay. All right, we're gonna keep on that vein for a little while, since I suspect that's why most of the spectators are here tonight anyway. Anyone who has, no matter if you're a short-term, long-term, permanent, half-year, weekender, we all wanna protect what for many people is our biggest investment. So, we're gonna stay in the short-term rental vein. So the cap referendum was a little over a year ago. And just last month, council expanded instances where a rental license can be obtained due to medical hardship or inheritance. So Skip, it's your turn. And the question is, considering the recent amendments, do you support the current cap of 800 ISTRs? Why or why not?
Well, I do support it, and I feel like the opportunity for people to have now exceptions, if you will, through amendments for heirs. I think most of the heir issues singled down to the idea that it had to be a family member, and now that's been amended to allow it to be a beneficiary, which opens up a lot more options for people to leave their property if they need to, or be able to pass it down appropriately. The cap itself has not necessarily resulted in anything that's so egregious that the balance of community is going to be lost. You've got long-term rental issues. Long-term applications have gone up since the cap's been imposed. Some of that is because I recognize that I can't short-term rental, but I can long-term rent. So there's options out there, and I don't think part of the solution is to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that just to overturn the referendum or to make it seem as though there's not options for people is the only game in town. I don't think that's where we are with it.
Okay, do you need me to repeat?
You don't have to repeat it. I think I understand it. So first of all, I want to clear up that I do not want to overturn the cap. I know that that is something that some of the people that maybe have an opposing view of my candidacy have said. It's not true. I've said since the last election that I feel like the cap was not fair to people who lived and owned property on the island before the cap was passed. And so I was strongly advocating, and still will continue to advocate, for amendments to be fair to people that own property before the cap was passed. And while I think the amendment to allow inheritance was good, the hardship, I have a problem with that. I mean, I'm a property owner who I don't think that a 4% property owner, I don't think that I should either have to die or have a hardship that makes me disabled in order to get an ISTR license. Short-term rental committee recommended a one-time waiver for all current residents or current property owners to be able to convert to a 6% if they wanted. I would like to see us readdress that amendment. I would also like to see us be able to, for a property owner, if they chose to sell, be able to sell their home one time to somebody who would be able to rent at least 72 days. And that, I think, would help relieve the real estate decline that we have seen, pretty drastic decline in the last year.
Thank you. Jody, in your opinion, how is the new code enforcement implementation going, and what improvements would you recommend?
Well, I've seen the complaints for 2023 for the code enforcement, and honestly, from the complaints that were recorded, less than 10% of them were for noise or what I would consider the nuisance ordinances, which originally drove us towards the cap. A lot of the biggest majority of the complaints are for signs, being in the right of way, not having proper numbers on houses, not rolling trash cans in a timely manner. I did not think that was the spirit and the purpose of the people that we hired to enforce violations. I'm not even sure if those people are only working during the day. If they are, that would explain why the violations that they're finding are what they are and not necessarily addressing the noise violations. There were 43 noise violations recorded in 2023. And like I said, that was about 10% of the complaints that were filed. So I think we've got more work to do there. I think that it was, I certainly think enforcement was the right approach to take to help improve the community and the complaints.
Okay. Skip, in your opinion, how's the new code enforcement implementation going, and what improvements would you recommend?
Thank you. It's getting better. It certainly was a staffing issue at the beginning, and I think everyone recognized that there was not the breadth of code enforcement that was necessary. I haven't counted each of the things, Jody, like you had, or you had the opportunity to do. I do know that many complaints that we have talked to people about that were noise related, they were short-term rental people that were not abiding by the community's common sense rules of playing games in the street and doing different things. Those were complaints that were never booked or recognized by the city because they didn't have a way in which to do that until they hired the additional enforcement folks that are out there. So some of it is not really as accurate as we think it could be, but it is certainly getting better. I feel like that the nuisance ordinances have been addressed, but the number of taking licenses away because of the egregiousness of those particular complaints hasn't been necessarily happening. It's getting better, but it needs to settle a little bit. We need to see where we're going with the actual enforcement and where that is leading us to for better solutions. I only see the opportunity for staff to continue to step up and work on that rather than just let it continue as it is.
Thank you. Skip. In Columbia, in the House and the Senate, bills have been introduced that limit local government's authority to enact restrictions on short-term rentals. Do you support these bills or the spirit of these bills? And what is your opinion on state infringement on the rights of counties and municipalities to self-govern?
Well, the bills that are pending right now at the State House have been, first of all, I don't agree with those, and I think they do infringe on home rule. They actually compromise home rule as we know it down to the city municipality. But more importantly, to withhold money from a municipality under the guise that they are restricting people from doing a certain ordinance, which home rule allows you to do, is, I think, egregious. It is being sponsored by an individual out of Myrtle Beach, a representative who is very deeply engaged in the real estate community. He's a property manager, he's a property owner, and he doesn't want to see anything that allows local communities to restrict it. We're having restrictions. Every community is looking at it on whether or not they can afford to do additional ordinances or not. But to have a bill at the State House that takes money away from a local municipality to run their own budgets, to run their own city, I don't think is fair. And in fact, I think it's a big step toward eliminating home rule or watered it down to the degree that a municipality doesn't have its own self-governance.
Want me to read it again?
No, I think I have it. So from what I understand, the bills that were introduced that are proposing to take money, basically what they were essentially proposing to do is to, the percentage of property tax revenue that the city gets because of the difference between the 4%ers and the 6%ers. Essentially, they were gonna take that away from the cities if they enacted short-term rental caps. And while that, it would be concerning that it's taking money away, in the last campaign, I studied the city's budget pretty heavily, and actually taking down the short-term rentals from 968 to 800 was going to have about a $1.2 million potential revenue impact from accommodations taxes to the city. So if we're concerned about losing property tax money, I think that is pretty limited compared to what we are willing to sacrifice on the accommodations tax.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to change topics now. Skip, we're going to talk about accessible housing. What can be done to increase access to affordable housing for island workers, and what type of incentives would you support to encourage property owners to offer lower rents specifically to city employees?
I think I'm supposed to go first,
Are
right?
you?
Go back to
I-
Jody.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I think so.
Thank
That's
you.
That's okay, no worries.
Okay.
And I'm happy to take that one
Oh, wait,
first.
I missed a
Oh, sorry.
question. That's what happened. I missed
Okay.
the last one in that section. So I do have you down.
Okay.
I just skipped a question, so let's back up and we'll come back to housing. Okay, so, so just to round out the previous topic. As a result of last year's referendum, some non-resident property owners want the right to vote in local elections and referendums, even when claiming residency elsewhere. Do you support legislation that would allow non-resident property owners to vote in Folly Beach elections and referendums?
I think voting in Folly Beach elections for candidates, whether it be city council, mayor, I don't support non-residents voting in those type of elections. I do support non-resident property owners being able to vote on a bill or an ordinance that impacts their property values.
That's it, we're good? Okay.
Yep.
Skip, same question for you. Do you support legislation that would allow non-resident property owners to vote in Folly Beach elections and referendums?
No, and I agree with Jody there. I don't agree with that, and I don't support that. I'm not sure I understood the second answer, the second part of her answer. If you're not a registered voter and an owner here, you shouldn't be voting here, in my opinion. There are multiple property owners that still maintain a personal residence here, and they should have every right to vote here. So I'm not sure where we got crosswise there, Jody, but I also agree with her, though. I don't agree that non-residents, non-present owners should be able to vote here just because they won't vote. They need to be 4% registered voters.
So I'll just clarify what I was
Okay.
saying. I don't believe that non-resident property owners should be able to vote for the representatives of the city. I do believe, I honestly don't think the referendum was the right way to go with passing the short-term rental ordinance. I think that was something that the people that we vote into city government should have taken care of. But if there is going to be a vote or a referendum on something that affects people's properties, I feel like they should have the right to vote on something that affects their property.
Okay.
Okay. Just to clarify, Jody correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard you say is registered voters vote for the officials, property owners with in other words, you have a vested interest. You should be able to vote for referendums that impact the rules concerning your property.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's pretty.
And Skip, if I understood you correctly, registered voters vote for everything, period.
The referendum that was passed by the permanent residents here is what started the entire beginning of STIR regulations and everything else. They're the permanent residents here. They live in the community here.
Okay, just to,
That's all I'm trying to clarify.
okay. Do you agree with what Jody's position is, that if you're not a 4%, if you're not a permanent registered voter here, you should have the right to vote in referendums that impact your property rights?
I do not agree with that.
Thank you. Okay. Now, we're gonna move back to housing. And Skip, you are up. So, I'll reread the question. What can be done to increase access to affordable housing for island workers? And what type of incentives would you support to encourage property owners to offer lower rents, specifically to city employees?
Well, it's a double-edged sword here, because there are two kinds of renters that we're trying to accommodate, and one is the food and beverage type renters and the ones that are city employees. And we've looked at a lot of different communities around the country that have had to deal with the same problem. So they're trying to figure out ways, do you annex land that you can build property on that will be accommodated housing? Well, we're an island. We don't have more land to build anything like that on. So what we have to do is we have to determine what's a fair way ahead to incentivize people that are owners to look at long-term renters as an option and not just short-term rentals only. The difficulty is that long-term renters get displaced every time the owner of that house decides to flip it into a short-term rental, and now they're bouncing around trying to find a place to live. City workers should have some opportunity, municipal workers should have some opportunity to have advantage to property access. I don't know what that looks like exactly. I think those are the kinds of things that'll be committee-wise looking at, and that is certainly a around the country issue that's going on, and I hope to be involved in that process.
Do you need me to repeat?
No.
Okay.
So I do have a proposal or a proposed amendment that I would love to float by city council, whether or not I'm on city council, and that is that we take some of the increased fees and the registration fees from short-term rentals and incentivize property owners with tax rebates, whatever you want to call it, but give them a financial incentive that helps offset the increased taxes they would pay from going from 4% to 6%, but they would have to agree to rent their house, not just a long-term rental, not a 30-day rental, not a 3-month rental, but an annual rental. We would incentivize them with some of those increased short-term rental registration fees. Also, I would also tie to that some maintenance standards. If somebody is going to take advantage of those incentives, that they would have some minimum standards they would need to meet on the maintenance of the property. And I do want to say that this is something that is important to me. I was a daughter of a service worker. My mom raised 4 children on a waitress's and bartender's salary. I recognize that every dollar is important to service workers, whether you are public safety or whether you are serving in a restaurant and bar. And if we can't make housing affordable, the very next thing that we really need to focus on is parking solutions, so that servers don't have to pay $30, $40 every time they want to come to work.
Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Is it my turn or is it a rebuttal
No,
issue?
it's a,
Okay, I just want to.
Jody gets the next question, but you can have a 30-second.
I just want to clarify something here,
Okay.
that I have found, talking to people, that the idea that you would take regular taxpayers' money that all the rest of the residents are paying and realign that to pay for somebody else's opportunity is a debatable issue. I don't know what the best solution is. Certainly want to look into different options and different solutions, but that is the biggest drawback that a taxpayer has is, wait a minute, I'm going to subsidize out of my tax dollar the willingness to underwrite somebody else's
I
ability.
agree. I don't think it should be underwritten from our tax dollars. That's why I propose short-term rental registration fees be used to cover those
But
expenses.
those go to the city though anyway, right?
Okay, we're gonna move on with this. If anyone has any particular questions for Jody and Skip and wants to continue the dialogue about accessible housing, they'll be around afterwards. Thank you. All right, Jody, we are now going to talk about environmental concerns. So we are fortunate enough to live in a very special place with unique flora, fauna, biodiversity, wetlands. And because of that, because of our privilege to be here, we need to be careful stewards of our environment. So what do you perceive as the top environmental concerns facing Folly? And what would you do to mitigate or eliminate them?
Well, obviously flooding is a big, as sea levels rise, flooding is a big concern. And one of the things that I have found is that we currently don't have the infrastructure being maintained in a way that will help mitigate the floods when they come. The December flood, a lot of people lost homes and cars, and it wasn't necessarily the sea level rise that did it. It was basically because we were not maintaining the drainage ditches and the structures. And that was, there was a 2019 study that determined that we were not maintaining and keeping up the infrastructure. Happy to see that there is more being done with federal funds that are going to expand the drainage, both the pipes and the placement of them. But if we don't maintain them, whether it's city, county, or state that has the responsibility for that area, then we're wasting money by not maintaining it. So that would be one. And then of course, litter and plastics and things like that getting into our ocean are the other big concern for both sea life as well as just keeping our drinking water and everything else safe. So anything that we could do to encourage taking plastics off of the island, straws, anything like that, I would certainly support.
Thank you. Do you need to read the question?
No. The environment is obviously a key priority for any coastal city like we are. I had an opportunity to spend some time with Dr. Elko, who is our coastal advisor and everything for the city. We do have a new plan out now that she's done, which is Folly Beach 2050, and it addresses water planning. Flooding is certainly a big issue. Ponding is a big issue. Drainage is a big issue. The Center Street project, which is fully funded by a grant right now to put in bigger water pipes, as well as they call them back valves or flooding valves that kind of back up things, was all done through what's called a SCIP. It's an SCIIP. It's a South Carolina infrastructure improvement project. And what she's addressed in there is that there is a different chemistry for the river than there is for the ocean. And so being able to balance which direction we put our assets and do our planning is extremely important to keep the streets from flooding, to keep the backwaters from getting polluted. We have septic tank issues that we have to continue to address. The city has done a lot to do better with programming their infrastructure for flooding and the environment, but there's a lot more to do.
Thank you. Guys, we're in the home stretch. I'm on my last page. Yay. And now I want to talk about campaign financing, and Skip, it's your turn. Campaign financing is a topic on all elections worldwide. From what organizations or businesses have you accepted financial or other in-kind support? And in a community the size of Folly, how does one maintain a neutral position? And is it possible to remain impartial when evaluating issues that impact both parties?
Okay, I think I alluded to it earlier in the introduction. I am supported by nobody. I've taken no money from any organization or any individual. I'm doing the ethics filing like I'm supposed to, but I am fully self-funded, to my wife's chagrin sometimes. But we decided that we didn't want to have a point where there was any inference among the public or the constituents out there that I was in favor of one special interest or the other. I'm not. My background, my experience, my career, I've always been a forward-thinking, step off from the line of departure, mission-oriented kind of guy. And I choose to want to solve issues and problems through processes that allow you to do it as an independent. We used a manner in the military, for example, it was called an OODA loop approach. Nobody's heard of an OODA loop. Well, it's an OODA, and that means you come upon a challenge and you observe it, you organize what you need to do to address that challenge, you decide what your action is going to be, and then you act on the action. So it's an OODA process. And I think that's the way I've approached this campaign. I'm looking at the issues that I think are important to the constituents. I make my own judgments about which way to go on them, and then I solicit people's input. I've been somewhat ostracized over not being very good at social media, and I apologize for that. I'm not.
Thank you. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay. From what organizations or businesses have you accepted financial or other in-kind support? And in a community the size of Folly, how does one maintain a neutral position? And is it possible to remain impartial when evaluating issues that impact those parties?
So, first of all, I will say, I don't know that there are any neutral positions on this island when it comes to the short-term rental debate. I have not taken any money from any PACs or businesses. I have accepted money from people who already knew what my position was, and they are supporting me because they knew what my position was. They knew what my position was before I ran last time. They know what my position is now. I've been pretty open about it. It hasn't changed, and it wouldn't change just because somebody wrote me a check to get elected.
Okay. Jody, this question's for you. As you prepare to start your abbreviated term, because you guys will only be doing about 18, 19 months, as you prepare to start your abbreviated term of service to Folly Beach residents, what 3 issues top your agenda, and what recommendations will you put forth to council to resolve them in the first 180 days?
Okay, so my first is parking, traffic, and pedestrian safety. I would like to address the city's plan to expand paid parking and see if that really balances well with our safety concerns with, like was brought up earlier, allowing parking on both sides of West Ashley. So certainly addressing that planned extended paid parking plan and addressing whether that is in the best interest of the city or not. Certainly I've talked about flooding, and I would like to coordinate with the city, the county, and state if it's on state property where drainage ditches and infrastructure is not being maintained. I've walked it, I've seen it. A lot of the flooding that we experienced in December could have been prevented had that been adequately maintained. And then I will continue to propose amendments to make the short-term rental cap fair to people that owned property before the cap passed. One is that I would go back to the short-term rental committee's recommendation and ask that we consider a one-time waiver for all residents that are 4% to be able to convert to 6% if they so choose. And second would be that we allow property owners to sell their property one time to somebody that could at least get a 72-day rental to help offset, to help draw those second-time home buyers to the island that eventually want to retire here.
Okay. Do you need me to read the question?
Sure.
Okay. What 3 issues top your agenda, and what recommendations will you put forth to council to resolve them in your first 180 days?
Okay, our truncated period of election here for till next November. You know, in my opinion, the issues that face us most starkly in front of us all revolve around safety, whether it's traffic safety, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. All those things are important to all of us. The whole idea of livability out here is subject to how we address moving forward the issues around flooding, around the infrastructure. As I alluded to earlier, Dr. Elko's got some great ideas. I think we're going to find ourselves interested in what's happening with transportation. We've got seniors that can't get off the island and back on the island. That's an important issue to me. I'm hoping in the new budget we'll have a traffic study for getting the folks out of Pease Island and the Clam Farm a chance to come to a center lane like we have at Mariners Key. I do feel that the amendments to the ordinance is a living document. Can it be refined? Can it be better? Absolutely. Is there anything in there that needs to be repealed or addressed or modified? I don't know. I haven't polled everybody on this island yet, so it takes a little more time to get some real input on how that is going to impact everybody across the board. I do feel we're making real progress, though, in improving the city's infrastructure.
Okay. And our last question will go to Skip. But before we do that, I would just like to take a little aside and this has nothing really to do with the election, but our Moonlight Mixers on the pier are coming up. And I just want to know, which would you prefer, the Drifters and the Beach Boys, or the Bee Gees and the Eagles?
We can't have them all?
The Drifters and who?
The Drifters and the Beach Boys, or the Bee Gees and the Eagles?
Ooh,
I think you have to have them all. I don't see how you can pick between those.
I would mix some of those up. I would
You're not gonna divide us over that one. I'm
do
sorry.
maybe the Eagles and the Drifters.
All right, so our last question, Skip, it's your question, and Jody, you'll close us out. You both get 2 minutes to answer this. And so the question is, why should I vote for you? And any closing remarks that will fit in your 2 minutes.
And I get to go first. I didn't know how fair that was. Okay. Why should you vote for me? I hope that at this point in my life, in my experience, that I bring the right level of civility, of common sense. I'll call it my C's. That was my average grade in college. I think it's community, it's civility, it's competence, it's commitment. It's those things that on a recurring basis you want to see as a person that is not beholden to any special interest, but hopes to address everyone across the board's interest. I want to represent everybody. Do I know all the issues? No. Anybody that claims they do, don't vote for them anyway, because that's not the case. Do we have access to everything that we need to have to be smarter about it? I haven't had access yet. I think that comes when you get that opportunity to collaborate and coordinate with the rest of the council members. I think I can do that. I think I have a level of collaboration, which I think is a strong suit for Jody. But collaborating and coming to a negotiated middle is where you govern from. You don't work on the extremes. You have to come to a balanced approach to your governance. And I hope that my background and experience and where I've been and where I hope to go lends itself to your trust and confidence that I want to represent all of you to the best ability that I can get smart enough on to do it in the short amount of time that's left in the remaining term. The question has been asked to me, well, are you just in this for the next 18 months? Or what do you think your longer term goals are? I'm a mission-oriented guy. I've lived my life that way. I've gone to bad places and come back from there. You don't leave before the mission's done. If I'm making a contribution, I'm going to stay as long as you'll have your trust and confidence that I can be your representative.
Thank you. You get the last word. Why should I vote for you? And any other parting comments in your 2 minutes?
Fair, kind, and inclusive. Some of you may have seen those words on my banners, on my buttons. They're not just a slogan to me. They are the values that will guide every decision that I will make on council. I will strive to listen to all of the voices and understand what the impacts are to all of our residents and everybody that is involved in the community before making any decisions that come before the council. If you choose to elect me as your representative to council, which I hope you do, I would use my nearly 30 years of leadership and collaboration, and also use my experience with data analytics to promote data-driven solutions to the challenges that the city faces. I think that's really important. I think some of the decisions that have been made in the last few years have been driven more by emotion and certainly came before we had all the data to make the best decisions possible. I've already talked about my priorities, so I won't go into that. I will just summarize by saying that in the 10 years that I have lived on Folly Beach, there have been 4 candidates from West Beach Court, a 2-block cul-de-sac, that have run for city council, Skip and me being included. I certainly hope that I'm the candidate that you choose. I think that I will represent you well, but I'm happy to know, regardless of this outcome, somebody from West Beach Court is going to be on city council.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out and submitting your questions. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hey.
Back over to Amy.
You guys did it. So thank you again for putting your names in the hat and doing this. Thank you at home for watching and for everybody coming tonight. Again, Dina, thank you so much. Please take these home. These are for you. And Dave and Wendy, thank you for your help as well with putting going through questions. And Wendy, thank you for helping with that long edition of the Sandstorm with the election input. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the City of Folly Beach. I think the mayor's already left, but for letting us use their facility. If there were any technical issues, blame them, not Civic Club. And if you have any questions that weren't asked tonight, I do think they're going to stick around a little bit if you want to follow up with anything. Also, if you're not a member of the Civic Club, join us. Not only do we do this, but we do a lot of other fun stuff too. So we do have a meeting coming up in April 16th, I believe, at 7 p.m. in the community center. So we will still be there even though the community center is closed for renovations. So you can find us follybeachcivicclub.org or on Facebook. We'd be happy to have you. Have a great night. Thank you.
Well done. No bruises.
Don't need to go there.